Welcome everybody to the Scale Up Show. This is your host, Ryan Staley, and I have a very special guest with me today. I have Darren Gallop. Darren is the co-founder and CEO of Carbide. He is the three-time CEO with a music background turned SaaS founder who specializes in building and leveraging information security and privacy compliance to SMEs to drive growth and, wait for it, speed up sales cycles. What's up, Darren? Happy to have you on the show, man. Welcome.
Happy to be here. Glad to be here.
Yes. I love the fact that you integrated your solution, or not integrated. You integrated your messaging with the fact that you're speeding up sales cycles, specifically related to security. So we are definitely going to dig into that. But before we do, I want to give a real quick backdrop on just kind of where you're at in the stage of the journey. So where are you guys at in terms of your ARR range?
Yeah, so we're a little north of 2 million earlier this quarter.
Okay, excellent, man. And then what's your primary revenue growth go-to-market strategy?
We're doing a lot of outbound, actually, like traditional sales, SDRs and sales folks. And I would say it's split between that channel and inbound. So, the inbound's a combination of things like being on podcasts, like your show, nice. Writing articles about, areas of concerns in the space, things like that. So it's pretty split down the middle there.
So kind of like an SEO podcast, thought leader combo, if you will. Okay, I love it. Yeah. And then walk us through what your solution does in a couple of sentences.
Right. So what we solve is the problem that SMBs are facing these days with all of these cybersecurity requirements, frameworks, standards, certifications, and more recently, all these new privacy regulations popping up, things like GDPR, HIPAA, but also, all these state and provincial, very specific privacy regulations. So it's really created a complex world where small to medium-sized businesses who were pretty ad hoc with security and privacy was more of an afterthought, now are needing to comply with a multitude of different things. It's gotten very complicated. Our solution basically intakes data about your company, figures out what it needs to comply with, where you're at now, what are the gaps, builds out a program that includes controls, cybersecurity and data privacy controls, policies, procedures, builds everything out into a project, provides training, awareness training to people that are running with the security program, and access to experts that can help you solve maybe unique problems you'll run into. So all this sort of in our platform, which integrates with about 130 other platforms out there, gets your security platform, gets your security posture up there, gives you the tools to monitor it, report on it, and then you get to the sales cycle and all that fun stuff.
Okay. Love that, man. And so when you relate it to the sales cycle and speeding that up, that's obviously for the cyber review that you have at the end of the sales process, or in the POC stage, or something along those lines, or requirement prior to the POC. Is that kind of what you're talking about, and from that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, it's really quickly gone from something that helps speed up to a sales process. I think in more recent days, it's actually like a requirement to even get into the sales process. So it used to be that you would get a security review late stage once they've assessed your that you're the vendor they want to go to. And this was sort of like an administrative step in the procurement process. What we're seeing now is it's actually becoming more of a, you need it to play the game of even getting in there. And they may look for documentation even in advance of considering you as a vendor. So it's both, facilitating getting into a sales funnel, into a process with an organization, getting them in there to speeding it up. So you're really talking about trust and just showing them that you're not going to create any additional risks or end up being, something involved in the organization's lacking of security or data privacy that they won't be permitted to work with you, once they've decided that you're the vendor they want to work with.
Makes sense. And what stage do you think, when you say SMB, what's your definition of SMB when, of the stage when you start working with companies in terms of revenue or employees, or how do you quantify that or make it more specific?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there's a lot of definitions of what size equals what, right? So we have a lot of early stage companies, as small as us, we're 33, 34 employees, even smaller. But what we're seeing a lot of growth in our customer base is actually organizations that are slightly larger. They might be 80, 150, and everywhere up to about 450, 500. We're seeing a lot of requirements in terms of making their security programs more sophisticated. So this could be organizations that don't have a program at all. It could be organizations that actually have something, and maybe they've passed some sort of SOC 2 or some sort of more basic security audit, and now they're getting required to meet more more expectations, higher expectations by their customers or vendors.
Okay, love it. And then how large is your team?
We're 33 or 34, somewhere in that ballpark. It's kind of a moving dial continually.
Oh, all right, excellent. And then are you bootstrapped or funded?
We're funded. We raised a pre-seed round and we raised a seed round. We are exploring potentially going out for a Series A, but we also we're pretty close to the cash flow positive mark, which is pretty exciting, and really looking to have some optionality. It's a bit of a different market out there in terms of raising cash, so we kind of have the ability to play both fields. But yeah, no, we've raised about $6 million to date into the business.
Okay, excellent. Well, don't be surprised if you get some calls from investors, because I've heard from my other guests that happens from time to time, especially if you're looking for funding. So, okay, so let's get into your story. You have a really unique founder journey in terms of how you got here. And I loved when we went through this in the pre-show. Last week we had the technical difficulties, right? So walk us through exactly kind of like how you got to this point, and then just what was your prior journey getting here, because it's definitely unique that a lot of people haven't taken before.
Yeah, so I think I probably said this when we chatted last week, but if I were to go back in time and tell my 20-something-year-old self that I was going to be the CEO of a cybersecurity company, I probably wouldn't have believed it. I may have even asked, like, what does that even mean? But life has the journeys that we go on tend to lead to the next journeys that we jump on board of. And so, for me, I dropped out of university when I was like 21, ended up on a Canada World Youth Exchange program over in Hungary, teaching English and French in a school in Eastern Hungary. A bit of a life-changing experience, kind of like brought me more to thinking of what do I want to do. And I've always had this dream. I always played music, grew up in a very artistic and musical environment. And I always had this dream of, being a rock star. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a crack at this. So I started a band when I got back from this Canada World Youth Exchange program. And, that band kind of, we had some local success in our region, but it proved to be pretty tough and, making ends meet and all that. So I'm working side jobs on the side. And then I ended up kind of, that just kept evolving, and from one group to another group, and the success got a little better every time, on a national level, even in the last act that I worked with.
Nice.
But got a little tired of it, got a little tired of the road and like the lifestyle, and it's got its pros and cons, and the pros wear off after a while.
Can I stop you right there, because I want to hear what kind of music was it, man? And what were you playing?
There was like
what
rock,
would you relate it to?
funk rock. A little bit of influence of things like from like a little bit of like Latin influence, but not Latin music per se. And so, yeah, just really fun. Like we played in the jam band circuit in Canada in the last band that I was in. It was a blast, right? But, after some time, I just kind of, the rush, the fun parts of the road started to wear off. And then the downsides of being on the road started to amplify it seemed. And so, I started doing more work in the studio, started recording bands, producing bands. At the height of that, I was co-producing records with Gordon Gano from the Violent Femmes,
Nice.
down just north of New York. And started a record label, had a handful of bands on there. We signed a distribution deal in a few different countries. We had a Canadian artist that was charting and all this. And then this was like fast forward, it's like 2007, 2008. The ass is falling out of the music industry and the economy at the same time. And just a lot of things changed, and it became, the successes weren't generating the type of revenue that we kind of hoped we could get to. And as a label, we were really leaning on things like Basecamp, and as we go back to 2007, like SaaS was pretty early stage, right? And the cloud, like what's the cloud? I didn't think we were using the word cloud, and I kind of just sort of thinking about it as like, well, could I make a software solution? Because I'm using all these makeshift general tools to run a music business. The music business is ripe. It needs efficiency. It's struggling with certain financial and economic challenges. So we started building software for touring artists, that proved to be really difficult because, the bands didn't have money, they didn't want to pay a lot for software. So we pivoted over to music festivals in 2010. By 2013, 2014, we started signing festivals like Bonnaroo and Burning Man and Coachella and Just for Laughs. And, even later on, some sporting events like X Games, things like that. And, that proved to be a pretty interesting journey. It was still fairly bootstrapped, not really venture backable SaaS, because it was really in a very, very specific niche, right? We weren't trying to be a global events management software. We're really focusing more on this music festival concept where we could dial in and be highly effective in a smaller market. And what happened was security started to become a question that evolved very quickly. And when we started signing deals with organizations like Live Nation and Disney, AEG Live, like some of these bigger organizations that have more sophisticated security, cybersecurity vendor requirements, it became very apparent very quickly that we did not have our shit together. And so this became an issue. We lost a couple of really valuable deals that we were winning. We had won, but we failed in security audit, and it just became a real big problem. So I put all my energy into it and built a security program, worked with outside consultants, learned a ton, ended up taking some courses, doing all these things. And so as we started eyeing our exit and having conversations about, the exit opportunity for that company, I was just really into security. I was on route to getting my CISSP certification and really thinking about security as like, wow, there's so much growth in criminal activity out there, and there's so many SMBs out there that are just standing with their pants down, and there was so much need for assistance, and there wasn't much in terms of humans that had the experience that could go out there and really facilitate and assist this massive like evolution in greenfield for need for security and data privacy stuff. So I just got really obsessed with it, and that's kind of what led me to founding Carbide.
Love that, man. Beautiful story. I mean, some great experiences along the way. I mean, like, so how did you end up working with the Violent Femmes guy? That's very random, and I don't remember you mentioning that to me before.
Yeah, I probably didn't. It's kind of like, small world thing. So one of the producers that produced a bunch of the Violent Femmes work, as well as others, named is Warren Brule. He lives in New York and does, continues to do work with folks from that group there. But he actually is born in Cape Breton, and he had come home at one point and heard some rumblings from some of his relatives about these up and coming bands in the region. And I was kind of in the middle of this emerging scene. And so him and I, he approached me. We started talking through things. We became friends. He became a mentor. Saw the opportunities in it, and we came together to start the record label. So Warren Brule effectively became my business partner in building this record label. And so when it came time to like going out and producing records, like he was calling upon folks in his network as well, which was a big elevation to sort of the velocity and the caliber of the projects we were working on.
That's awesome. Well, so something that you said as well struck a chord with me, and kind of like what you were talking about on how you lost a really big deal after you were awarded, or deals, I should say. Was that with Disney, or was that with somebody else, or what? Can you name the companies?
It's a long time ago now. So, it was Live Nation, and it was a deal that would have brought us like a whole bunch of European festivals. I think there was 10 or 11 festivals. So it was a big deal, and it was for all intents and purposes a done deal with, the caveat of passing this security audit, and we didn't. And it was like, it wasn't repairable. And by the time it got to us not passing the security deal, in the way festivals work, everything's like so cyclical around the season, right? So there's like, they needed to start using the tool by date X, or there was no value. They couldn't wait any longer, and we would miss the cycle. And so, we ended up sorting things out. So by the end of the season, we were ripe and ready to work with them, but we had missed the opportunity. We went back. We were trying to reach out, but we burnt the bridge effectively, right? And so like that was pretty impactful. Like that probably would have been somewhere around a 10% increase in ARR off of one deal.
Wow. Well, how big was the deal?
I don't really know. Like, I know that it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars in
Okay,
ARR.
so significant, yeah.
Yeah,
All
it
right,
was
so it
substantial,
it was a
especially
while
for
ago, right?
us. We were like a 10 or 11 person team at the time. So, like, it
Well,
was a
yeah, I
big,
mean, for an early stage, that's
yeah.
huge, So, and then obviously it sounds like there's a lot of second order effects you would have had with other businesses that you could have got as a
Oh
result of that.
yeah, I mean, 100%. That would have likely, stemmed to further increase in around their assets throughout Europe, and deeper penetration into their assets in North America, and probably would have brought us other organizations in the competitive landscape in those markets as well. So yeah.
So, however, going back to it's like something you said kind of struck a chord with me in a good way, right? It kind of reminds me of what's happening right now, where you said there's so many SMBs that had basically like a security. I don't want to say security void, right? You didn't say that exactly, but that's kind of like my perception of what you said, right? Where there was such a gap, there was so much white space, and there's such a need for it, but there wasn't a lot of solutions out there. Now, and it was rapidly evolving, right? So, do you think the same thing's happening with AI right now with smaller businesses, with the evolution of large language models and how much it's getting democratized and organizations implementing that in their business? Do you see parallels like you did when it came to the cybersecurity side, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that that is the case, right? So AI and the large language models are going to have, they're going to evoke a lot of change in a variety of different domains, both in the context of service businesses as well as in SaaS businesses. So that's one side of things. There's also a lot of a lot of governments kind of running around with their hair on their fire, figuring out like how the hell are we going to manage this? How do we protect folks? Like, how do we protect society? And when they think about that protection, they're thinking, there's data security and data privacy. Like, think of that as a more, let's call it now, a traditional sort of thought that goes into everything that changes in the technological landscape. But then it's also like all the other things, right? Like, what are the ethics around decision making being made by machines? What degree of and what's the impact to various industries? So, there's a lot going on, and I think it is definitely a land of opportunity. So, anytime you have this disruptive moment, right, where like all of a sudden, whether it's like the internet, right, like the internet caused a lot of problems for a lot of businesses, right, but it also generated an entire economy of businesses, and I think we're going to see similar things, right, like the blockbusters that continue to try to force people to rent DVDs or VHS tapes are not going to fare out well. And those that embrace the technology instead of like, oh, it's, yeah, kind of push it aside, those that embrace it, or the new businesses that jump aboard and work with it, I think there's a tremendous world of opportunity. But we are definitely going to see layers of regulation popping up very quickly. And that's going to be something that'll be interesting to follow. I will admittedly say that on the legal side or the regulatory side, I'm less thinking about that, because I'm in the depths of growing a business 100% year over year, which is always a big consuming event, no matter what size your business is at. And
Right.
and our thinking on AI is highly focused, and my energy in terms of AI is highly focused on how I believe AI is going to revolutionize the industry we're in, and how the problem we solve is best solved in terms of what the customer actually needs. And so we're thinking about that. Like, we definitely don't want to be the blockbuster in this story, but I do think that a lot of things, or a lot of the ways that tools in our space are solving this problem, I think that the minute OpenAI opened the doors with their with even 3.5, I think that a lot of that stuff became really quickly obsolete, and the shelf life is very limited. And so we look at that in terms of how we're building our product very intimately, and the way we've built policies, procedures, the way we've crafted documentation, crafted controls, and identified needs in businesses using a more traditional matrix type models. Those matrices are still valuable, and that stuff is not garbage per se, but there's now this layer where you can bring a level of you can really get to that near human componentry. So where I think that most companies now are doing some sort of combination, like if they're an SMB and they're trying to solve a security data privacy problem, it's usually a combination of an expert or a human who has the ability to navigate and make decisions, factoring in a lot of data and variables and experience and knowledge, and a tool like a compliance management software or a GRC software or something. And I think that human component now with AI will reduce its requirements substantially, and that the technologies that evolve leveraging the AI to almost to get closer to that human sort of value proposition in the equation are going to excel really rapidly. And that's entirely where our product innovation, product roadmap, and attention lies right now.
Love that. I see a lot of parallels to that as well. And you can even see it now already. And this is I don't want to say we're at ground zero, because obviously AI has been going on for 20 years, right? But in terms of the democratization of some of the tools and products that are out there that's happening, is I see agencies getting automated in a lot of ways, right? Like for example, there's a tool, and it's funny because I'm redoing a website, right? And there's tools out there that can create websites on WordPress, and it takes you probably 15 minutes to do. As a non-WordPress person, and there's companies that are built around that, right? And it's funny because I think, and I even did this. I got a quote from someone, and they're trying to charge $3,000 to do it. And I'm like, listen, I can get 90% of the way there, for $50 a month, right? Or $20 a month. And I'm like, do you really and so I think there's people, like you're saying, that are going to get blockbustered or bordered or Kodak, whatever you want to call it, right? If they're blind to this and don't have that, I should say, view of what's happening, right? So
yeah, look, I think when it comes to a service-based business and an agency, if you're not doubling down on how you're going to leverage AI to create massive efficiency in your business, and you're not building and or leveraging best-in-class tools around that, you're going to get steamrolled pretty quick. I think I think we had these conversations recently, we had somebody wanted to translate a policy into another language, and it's well, do you realize how good some of these some of the newer sort of tools built on AI have far surpassed more traditional sort of Google Translate, the ability for AI to contextualize, not thinking of everything word for word, but to actually contextualize messaging and rewrite in the form of a translation in another language, just as an example, right? And I think you could be a translation firm, just hey, look, I'll take it off your hand, be really price competitive, and using AI in a big way, and just using humans as a set of eyes versus the lift. We had this conversation yesterday with my CTO, and we were talking about what AI is going to do to the world, even things like developers, developers and user experience, and some of these things that, quite frankly, we kind of position them as being white collar jobs. And if you look at developers, there's a lot of developers that are just it's the equivalent of somebody who's just going out there and stacking bricks all day, right? Or building a clear and I think those sort of working class devs, not the ones that are coming up with concepts and ideas and really sort of creatively solving problems, but a lot of devs are just filling in the scope, and they're just there writing lines, right? I think that the demand for that degree of workforce to build a product that's the past. I'd be, I think I laugh a little bit, all these schools that are just catching on in small regions now that are oh, we need to create more software developers. It's you missed it. That was 20 years ago. And it's you now need to think about people who can who can build and design and solve problems creatively and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it's scary and exciting. If I was a developer, I'd be thinking about, how do I leverage that and become expert in this to be very relevant So if a company, instead of hiring 10 developers, is going to hire 2, I would be the developer that you'd want to hire, because I'm going to be able to piece these things together, leverage them, and manage the robots for you, like kind of thing. So
It's true. It's so true. I mean, I think I saw as well on GitHub that 93% of people on GitHub are now using AI in their development, right? So that I thought that was pretty interesting to see that adoption rate being so high. Because like I'm looking at more on the revenue side, on the marketing and sales side, and it's abysmally. I think it's ridiculously low right now. I'm really passionate about that. I see so many companies, and this goes from the top down, where organizations are implementing it into their product, but they're not implementing it into their team, right? And so I think that's a huge opportunity, because like I've seen from my personal experience, like things that took me like 10 years of meetings with C-levels to like figure out. If you ask it the right question, you can figure that out in a couple minutes, right? And so like that's on the business acumen or experience side. Now, granted, most people don't know that unlock or how to do that, right? They don't understand how to ask it in a very specific way to get the output that you would get from that experience. So I think there's some gaps there, but those are the opportunities. Or even things that used to take me a couple hours of work to do, I can now do in 15 minutes, right? Like that's immensely valuable.
I think you need to, like, the other thing though is like you need to know like what a desired outcome looks like also. So like,
True.
I know our sales folks use it for sure in crafting responses to questions from customers, but they have to read the answer and have to have enough knowledge to be sure, because it'll lie or it'll give incorrect answers. Yes, you're prompting. The quality of the prompts can certainly, it's kind of like garbage in, garbage out. The quality of the prompt can determine. But even with quality prompts, as surprising and as amazing the tools are, you still want to read them. And you're probably, I find myself often when I'm asking more in-depth questions and in domains that I know, is that I'm coaching through my prompting to get the final outcome. And it's really doing the grunt work for me, because I'm still using a lot of brain power to structure the prompts, brain power to read the results, brain power to craft the training required to get the desired outcome. But I don't have to write the sentences and worry about all the grammar and spelling and all the pieces to crafting it. So it's a huge saving. We do that for sure in our sales team. I would agree. Like, I think, you're saying this to me about like you're thinking about it through the sales and go to market side, and I'm guilty of it. I'm thinking of it way more right now on the product side, because I think that's like do or die versus cost efficiency, right? It's like, if we don't get on top of this stuff, we will be blockbuster. And then I'm thinking about it, and we're using it a lot more in depth in our customer success operation, because we have a fairly involved customer success department. Like, we're not just there answering questions about like, hey, how do I download a PDF of this thing from your tool? It's more like, hey, do you have any recommendations on how I can encrypt these, 48 hard drives and manage that and monitor it? Like, they're more like, here's my bigger problem, not like, how do I use the tool? So, we're training AI tools in our own knowledge base of, Carbide best practices and other data and knowledge that we've exercised over the years of working with customers, and using that to help customers have to put less brain power in and get answers. And we're doing that not through like a chat window. We're doing that through a more trained environment, through the API in our own tool, exposed to our customer success, that has less lying capacity, because it's really like, we're tightening up some of the parameters like temperature and whatnot to really get very literal answers based on a body of knowledge per se.
That's good. That's smart.
But I'm excited about the sales stuff you're saying, though. I'm like, damn, I need to like go for a long walk and think more about, and maybe sit down with sales and marketing and start thinking more about, how much further can that go? Because I think there's big opportunity, and I don't see it as a cost cutting. Like, for us, I feel like I would spend the same amount on employees whether there's AI or not. It comes down to like the value you can provide customers, the growth that you can provide from your go-to-market strategy, the growth you can provide from product. And then like effectively, like the lens I look at that through is, if I can use tools to create that greater efficiency and create more value from the money invested, then I can put more money in to hire more people, put better toolage in, and continue to scale that. Right. So I think like, I think a lot of people kind of have this like, oh, it's going to take our job. It's like, well, it is going to take a lot of jobs, but it's also going to create opportunity, massive opportunity. And that's why it's like the naysayers who are like, yeah, I'm not really worried about that yet. It's like, okay, well, but it sounds to me like by the time you're convinced to worry about it, it might be a little late for you and your folks that aren't really, taking the bull by the horns per se.
Yeah, it's true. I think you dropped a lot. I could share some things with you after the episode too. I just got hired by a company to help them implement some of this into their business, integrated into their sales function. So I've been obsessed with it since I think like I got around Christmas time of last year, right? Because that's
Me
when
too. That's exactly when.
yeah, I
Yeah.
got exposed to Dolly, which was the text to graphics, right? And then ChatGPT, like right when it came out, and I've been using it. I probably spent like 150 hours in it. So there is a lot of nuance to it, right? So let's shift gears a little bit because we're almost out of time. One of the things that I would love to get from your perspective are kind of like two sides of the coin, right? What's the single biggest thing that you see working well and growing your business right now? And it doesn't have to be right now. It could be the single best strategy that you have for growing your business that you've seen. And then I have the flip side of it next.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what I think's been the most impactful in the business, and I think this is a difference of like Marcato, my last business at its peak, I think was like 16 employees, right? So like I had my hands in everything, right? Like we were all in the same building, and like it was like I was running the show in a lot of ways, and my co-founder, and we didn't really build a leadership team to the same extent. And what I have now in Carbide, and we've done post our seed like last year, 2022, we put together a leadership team and like bringing in people that are super kick-ass at things, like bringing in a sales leader versus trying to figure out how to scale and build a sales team. It's not that you can't, but it's like, as your business gets bigger, like as the CEO, I find like there's all kinds of stuff. I go into a week and I'm like, I got tons of time to focus on this, this, and this. And you just like, there's constant like derailment and constant things that come up out of nowhere that you have to deal with. And then, as your business gets more complex with stakeholders, a board, investors, like you have to do, like there's more to manage there on the stakeholder side. So like having somebody in there owning sales that has experience in building a sales organization is like for me has been super impactful. And the same thing in the customer service, customer success side of things. Like we brought in two phenomenal leaders, one in the VP position of customer success, the other in the VP of sales and marketing. And like that, just like those are now two areas in the business that I have, absolute confidence. And so I can focus more, my co-founder and I can focus more on company strategy, on raising money, on leadership, and bringing the team together, and on building product, like building a best-in-class product, and we're not at ground zero in the world of cybersecurity solutions. A lot's happened in the last couple of years. It's been a very fast evolving space, but it's still early days. Like there's still so much greenfield, and there's still so much opportunity for evolution in terms of sophistication of products. AI opens a massive door and portal into a whole new layer of possibility when it comes to innovation. So being able to spend more time there, knowing that I have very sophisticated, very trustworthy and competent, experienced people taking other very, very important parts of the business so I can be more hyper-focused, is just, it changes things, right? Like, otherwise you're like, kind of feel like you're spinning plates, right? And you're like trying to help sell and you're trying to lead sales. And it's just like, all of us, we're just mere mortals, right? So we need like having some leadership, bringing in people that are like better at things than you are to handle those things. It's just like it creates bandwidth, right? And you can use that bandwidth to drive growth.
True. So true. Okay. Flip side, what's the single biggest challenge in your business right now then?
I think for us, like if I was to say the biggest challenge is a lot of companies still don't think about security for the purpose of security. They think about it as like a red tape sort of administrative bullshit that they have to go through to close deals. And it's like, so we see a lot, and it happens more so in the early stage companies. And I totally get that because, if you're an early stage SaaS company, your biggest risk is probably running out of cash before you get to cash flow, break even, or your next round of funding. So I understand like that predicament. But what we see happen is organizations will go, look for the cheapest, fastest way to get, say, a SOC 2, if that's what their industry is demanding. And then once they get that document, they just kind of really quickly go back to status quo, and then so it's kind of like becomes security theater. And so engagement in those younger companies, and not all, so there are some young companies that totally see it, and they realize they're signing security addendums, they realize the threat to the business. But I think most of those really small companies are thinking of it like transactional, and so engagement becomes staggered. And for us, we've moved up market slightly in terms of our targeting, where we find there's actually a dedicated person, or more they have more experience, there's more demand for security, so it isn't a seasonal sort of perspective. It's very much ongoing, which is what it needs to be.
Love that. That makes sense. So more of a practice instead of an event, right? Process.
It's like getting in shape, right? You don't just you don't just hustle hard, get a trainer, bust your ass for 8 weeks and drinking all these kale smoothies and protein shakes, get super lean, and then go back to drinking beer and eating pizza and sitting on your ass and expect to that's not healthy. You don't end up being healthy in any way long term. It's just you tried to do something, you got to a certain goal, and you're okay, autopilot this.
So true. I love that analogy too. I mean, it's I think it's funny in the business world in terms of revenue growth. One of the areas I see people doing the same way, where they think of it as an event instead of a process, is systemizing customer to prospect referrals.
Yeah,
literally just did a post on it because people think they're oh, I asked and they didn't give a referral, right? Versus stacking it on top of a sales process of what you're already doing and just integrating it in there. And then it becomes repeatable and scalable pipeline growth that's not attached to people, right? So I see the same kind of thing that you mentioned right there on that side. So it totally relates with me.
Awesome.
So, all right. Well, unfortunately, Darren, we're up on time. Where can people find you? Where can they find out more about Carbide? And then we'll wrap things up.
Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn if you're looking for me personally, or on my podcast, Why I'm Still Awake. And then, if you're looking for more about data security, or if you have a company and you're trying to think about how you navigate security and data privacy, you can go to carbidesecure.com. And we've got tons of data on there that'll help you sort of wrap your head around what that world looks like.
Love it. Well, thanks for being on the show. I enjoyed your journey. It was fascinating, and a lot of cool twists and turns that you took. And it's funny how we end up doing what we're doing sometimes. So thanks for being on, Darren.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And I will see you on the next episode.